What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. And as always, we are presented by Fresh Roasted Coffee. As the weather cools down, you too can cool down with a fresh, cold brew iced tea, or, of course, one of your favorite iced coffees from our friends over at Fresh Roasted. All you need to do is get something a little hot. They'll got you covered as well. FreshRoastedCoffee.com. Check out the promo code BYP20 to save 20% off your first purchase in our show notes on the YouTube channel, as well as the audio on Buzzsprout. And with that, the NFL season, again, just continues to fly by. We are through 6 weeks. We welcome in our good friend, NFL insider and host, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 FM, the Game Coastal Sports Network. And of course, joins me during the Drive with Q and BYP. That, of course, is Lloyd Vance. And I thought maybe we were going to be able to recap the games, and we'll highlight a couple, but boom, right? You got Nick Sirianni still acting like a freaking clown with the Philadelphia Eagles. You got Aaron Rodgers getting a new toy. Then all of a sudden, you blink, you get Josh Allen getting a new toy. So we'll start with the big news. Davante Adams traded from the Raiders to the New York Jets. I'll get to the details in a moment, but I mean, let me ask you this: when you watch Monday Night Football's game, and the irony last night, right? Monday night is that poor Mike Williams running horrible routes, and it looks like he's going to be on the trading block or the chopping block. And Aaron Rodgers comes out afterwards and pretty much throws him under the bus. And then what happens? The worst kept secret in the NFL. Adams moves from the Raiders to his old brother in Aaron Rodgers, and the two had that great hookup for years in Green Bay. So, does this really do anything for the Jets at the end of the day? I mean, does it really put them over the top?
Well, Q, it's going to help them in terms of just playmaking. You saw it, and Aaron Rodgers, it's written all over his face. He was not happy with Mike Williams. He had about 2 to 3 drops in that game, balls he probably should have caught. He already has Wilson there, who's a dynamic young receiver, and then he has his guy Alan Lazard, who did a great job in terms of catching that Hail Mary, and he has confidence in him. But when Rodgers does not have confidence in somebody, particularly Williams, you saw, he's like, all right, I'm done with
Shit,
this
you're on the
guy,
shit list.
and he wanted Gibson out there as well, and they weren't playing Gibson, so maybe they'll give that young guy an opportunity. He's a good return man, but I think Davante Adams could be a good addition to this team. But as you were kind of alluding to, Q, this offense is struggling. Downing's calling the plays now. Yes, they demoted Hackett. That was his best buddy. But it just something was amiss in this game. Yeah, everybody's going to point to the missed field goals that Zerline missed in the game and had some struggles in that tricky win in the New Meadowlands Stadium. But overall, I thought their offense was kind of stagnant. They really couldn't get the running game going, and maybe Adams can give them a spark. But this is a mess that Salah's kind of left there, and Aaron Rodgers is kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the offense, even with Zach Wilson through a couple games, pretty much the numbers were comparable to what Aaron Rodgers has put up. The Jets lose last night on Monday Night Football 23-20. You take away just a fluky, again, Hail Mary. I mean, come on, Buffalo, knock it down. Well, you play defense. They were running all over the Jets. I don't think this really makes the Jets any more than what we already thought they were, at least me, and that's a non-playoff team. Now, conversely, the rival last night in the Buffalo Bills, they pulled the trigger for Murray Cooper. And, a couple of schools of thought here. You look at the Jets and Adams, I think it's a third round pick conditional, for a guy that's pretty much going to be a rental per se. And then we look at, and I'll get again, we'll clean up the details. But then Buffalo turns around and we know they've got some really good weapons. And obviously they've got some good players, that young running back. They have some good wide receivers. But now you have a big game threat, a big play threat for Josh Allen. So, if you think about this, and again, I'll pull up the details while we get your initial thoughts. The Bills acquired Cooper in a trade today with Cleveland, so now you've got a true number one. And the Bills received Cooper in a 2025 6th round pick for a 2025 3rd round pick and a 7th round selection in 2026. He's only 30. The guy's in his prime. That's a big time player.
And Cooper, this is his fourth team, so he's kind of bounced around the National Football League, but he's been a player ever since he came out of Alabama. And the Browns aren't going anywhere. I watched a lot of that game, them against the Eagles, and they're not getting him the football. He was not happy in Cleveland, and why not get something for him while they can? Because that offense is stagnant. They're 1-5. Now everything's going to change for him, and
Yep.
he's a high volume player, as you were alluding to, Q. He's a guy when he's getting the ball, he's happy. He is a playmaker. So as long as he can stay healthy, I think he's really going to help this Bills team because Coleman was struggling to get separation. Shakir is kind of banged up, and the rest of that receiving group, MBS and some of the other guys, they're just not playmakers. Now they do have a pretty good running game with that running back that stepped in and Cook when he's healthy, and they have two very good tight ends. So I think this adds another dynamic to that offense, and it's going to help Josh Allen. They're 4-2 right now in the driver's seat in the AFC East, and the Bills. This is going to help them compete, but we know it's playoffs or bust for them. They got to figure out a way to beat the Ravens and the Chiefs of the world.
Yeah, New England. I mean, they think they might have found their young quarterback in May, and then we know the issues with the Miami Dolphins. So it's the Bills' division to lose. Again, circling the wagon in the NFL, 6 weeks in the book on this edition of BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, you mentioned the Browns and Amari Cooper, now his former team. They hung around against the Philadelphia Eagles. They lose at 20-16. But I want to get into the Eagles because really, at the end of the game, what's been the talking and the focal point over the last 24, 48 hours was, again, the clownish antics of Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni yapping with a fan. Um, you know, I'm at the point now where I believe when this team misses the playoffs, he will be fired. I'm not going to sit here and say fire him right now. I said it a couple weeks ago. And I said if they lost to the Browns, you'd probably consider it, and they should. But now it's all about just red flags and check marks. I mean, he's sitting up there. First of all, he's jawing with a fan, and I don't care who the friggin' fan is. And now we know who the fan coming out to light. And well, he has the right to do this. That no, you're a head coach of a professional football team where you got 52, 53 other guys that you're supposed to lead, billionaire owners, and you're gonna yap back and forth. I don't care the context of it. I don't care the content of the conversation. He looks like a friggin' jackass and a clown. And what bothered me the most is then he takes his kids up there to the friggin' press conference in some twisted, delusional way, thinking that they're not going to ask questions. The media is not going to go after him because his kids are there. I mean, it almost reminds me of that friggin' scene in New Jack City when Nino Brown is sitting there and they're putting everything, the wedding's all done, and all of a sudden they know it's a hit. And what does he do? He picks up a friggin' kid and he tries to use her like a shield. I mean, that's what I thought Nick Sirianni was doing. Let me have the kids out there to take the shrapnel and the bullets on the beach. I mean, absurd. And then he's cursing in front of them. He is such a classless clown. I have Eagles friends, fans of the Eagles right now. Good friends. They're like, get him out of here. Like, you cannot conduct and compose yourself like that. And if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, and I don't care, he's going to come out and, Nick, he's got to apologize and this, and you hear all these reports the players want that fire. BS, man. I guarantee you give a truth serum to half those guys in that locker room. They're like, this guy's a freaking clown. So what did you make of that besides the fact that the Eagles right now are not a very good football team?
They won the game 20-16. They survived, despite their head coach who's a meddler. He's meddling with the two coordinators that they brought in. Kellen Moore is trying to run this offense,
That's
fix
right.
some things. They got their two receivers back, which made them play a little bit better. No turnovers for Hurts, but in the end of the day, the story is Nick Sirianni. And I loved what Damian Woody said on ESPN. This guy's a clown.
He
I
is.
love when he let everybody know this. You and I have been talking about this over and over again. The theatrics and the non-coach mentality. He's not a leader of men. And that just showed you once again that he's a guy that, come on, man. It seriously, you're gonna yap with fans and act like and you did something, you're pumping your chest out. You just beat a team that's now 1-5, whose quarterback is probably one of the worst players in the National Football League. Total organization disarray. You survived, you get the win. Okay, move on. And you and I have been covering the NFL. It's almost 20 some years I've
20
been around
plus
National
years.
Football League. And are you kidding me? I've never seen a coach with that type of demeanor. I mean, I've covered all kinds of coaches. People have said this guy was in over his head, et
Yep.
cetera.
Yep.
And none of them acted like that. And he acts clownish. And all this jawing and all that. And then, as you said, he has the nerve to bring his kids up there. He knew what he was doing,
Of course he
trying to
did.
say, okay, this is going to soften the blow. All right, this is not Allen Iverson in the NBA Finals bringing his son up, on a special
That's right.
occasion.
That's right. Special
This
occasion.
this is a
Week 6.
week week
Yep.
6 win over a team that was 1-4, now
Horrible.
1-5, and you survived. You got lucky. Okay, they booed you. All right, take it and move on, move
Yeah.
forward. And all the great coaches, they know their players are watching. So you're right, Q. These guys are watching him. And yes, true serum, most of them probably say, you know what, this guy ain't
I,
it. Yes, he has a great record, but go away. And I think it's just a matter of time once the season
I
ends.
do too. I mean, Noel, Landry, Walsh, Parcells, Belichick, they're not doing that. Like they're not doing that. If you're Jeffrey Lurie, you have to pull him aside and be like, knock it off. You want to be fiery and pump up your guys and get the crowd going. But you know what? They have a right to bark. I don't want to hear this. Well, he's got a right to bark back. No, he doesn't. Shut up. Like honestly, shut up. He's had a cup of coffee in the NFL. They had a nice run. Okay, when let's be honest, if Purdy doesn't get hurt in the NFC Championship, they're not beating the freaking 49ers. They're a play away from winning the Super Bowl. Imagine if this guy would have won a Super Bowl. Oh my God. I mean, I would just,
Couldn't tell him no.
get me to a freaking bridge, please. Let me walk under a piano like in the cartoons. I mean, enough is enough. You mentioned the Browns, and I'm wondering why have they not benched Deshaun Watson? What are you waiting for? He stinks.
That is coming from above. It's Jim Haslam is the owner of the team, and he's like, look, I paid this guy guaranteed money. We're putting him out there. Don't put Jameis out there. I'm sure Andrew Barry, who's the GM, and I've always talked to some people, and they said Stefanski, the head coach, is not on the same page with him in terms of playing this guy, but in terms of playing him as well. And this is his guy. And Haslam's like, you know what, put him out there no matter what. And
But
this
why?
is something they're
Stefanski's going to
going to
lose
have
his
to.
job.
Exactly. He's picking a quarterback who he paid 200 and I guess 30 million guaranteed to over the head coach and everybody else. And they're going to have a very bad season. They're probably going to turn the page. The thing is, they're going to have to eat so much money, Q. They're not going to be able to do one of those NBA, dump deals. I don't know
No.
if you remember, like Jamal Mashburn at the end of his career, he wasn't even playing. They just put him on a roster, and the team was like, all right, we'll pay his salary. And no one's going to do that in National Football League. They're just going to have to cut him, pay his money, take a huge cap hit. But you're right. This team's going nowhere fast, and it's becoming a national joke. Everybody's just like, let's play the Browns so we can get a W. Yeah, yeah.
A couple years ago, I can't believe the Texans aren't playing him. They're going to trade him. Now look at the Texans. Playoff caliber, contender in the AFC with a young head coach and a really good young quarterback. And the Browns are an absolute mess. Speaking of messes, once again, the Giants, a game that you look and you say to yourself, the defense plays lights out. They had so many opportunities to win that game. Obviously, they need to go out and get another kicker. Brian Dable said they're going to stick with Joseph. Daniel Jones, inexplicable turnover. I know there's these, I guess you can say, thoughts or buzz with no credibility saying that the Giants should make a move for Stafford at the trade deadline because the Rams are going nowhere. Okay, whatever. I mean, hell, I'll take Flacco at this point. At least he throws the friggin' ball down the field. But the bottom line is the Giants offensively, they're offensive. The defense is playing really well, but now that offensive line might take a hit with Andrew Thomas potentially being out for the season. So I look at this game against the Eagles on Sunday, and we'll talk a little bit about it later in the week. I mean, you're hoping you get Neighbors back. Singletary, Tracy ran the ball, but it just boils down to the quarterback. And I know we say it ad nauseum. He's too inconsistent. He's such an enigma. I would have no problem right now if they benched him and they went to Drew Lock. But this is what I want to bring up. If you recall in August, when we were talking about storylines, I mentioned to you, watch the Giants the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Because if they're 2-5, 2-6, 2-7, they're going to bench him. They're going to bubble wrap him because they don't want him to get hurt and have to pay him. So I think if they lose a couple more games, that might be it for Daniel Jones.
You're right. And it's a situation where Q, they've gone now like 5 straight games where he had 0 touchdowns and at least 1 interception. And they're not scoring with him, particularly at home. So the offense is going nowhere. They have a really good young running back who did a nice job in the game, and I was like, okay, this kid may have something to him. He's running downhill, and they were in that game against the Bengals, and yes, the kicker kind of had a very bad game, and they're going to get rid of him, as you said. But the game was to be had, and Jones just never seized the moment, and you just wonder, okay. Some people say no neighbors. That was probably the big
He's
thing,
not
but
the guy. He's
he
not the
he
guy. He's
had
not.
his opportunities, and he wasn't getting it done. Another one of these quarterbacks where you paid him the money, and unfortunately they're stuck with him. But I kind of feel like you are they're going to move forward without him. They've seen enough. Dayball, Joe Shane, they're saying, okay, we gave him the money, made a mistake. They need to move
That's
on. But
exactly
yeah,
it.
why not bench him? Why not bench him until the end of the season? Maybe Locke can give them a spark. And the NFC at the bottom is still kind of wide open, and they're still kind of in the mix. They have 2 wins or 2-4. They're not dead in the water, but he gives them no chance as starting quarterback.
Well, a couple teams that are dead in the water. I think the Giants are. Jacksonville's dead in the water. The Titans, we know they're dead in the water. Patriots are dead in the water. Tampa Bay puts up 51. Their offense is wrong. Commanders come back down to earth a little bit. And then you get the news coming out of Pittsburgh that maybe they're going to let Russ marinate a little bit. I think it's absurd that Tomlin would even consider benching Justin Fields and then going to Russell Wilson. Like, I get it. Fields doesn't blow you away. You're not going to sit there and say, man, he sits there in the pocket and he just slings it. But the kid, there's something to be said about being banged up and bounced around and knocked down. And then he's just come out. They're 4-2. They're right there in the AFC North. I think they're a fraudulent team after 6, but a winning record. He's played well. He's not turning the football over. Completion percentage is up. The yards are there. He's not going to throw a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns, is my point. But what he makes up in that type of town, he makes up in grit, his legs, his scrambling ability. He's a gamer. Are you going to tell me Russell Wilson gives the Pittsburgh Steelers a better chance to win going forward than Justin Fields? Now, I don't know if this is a little gamemanship by Mike Tomlin, maybe light a spark under Fields' hiney. I don't know, but I just don't believe that it's the right move. And furthermore, again, you look at that game against the Raiders. I mean, he didn't put up gaudy numbers. He didn't, but he didn't turn the ball over. They kept him upright for the most of the game, and he added 60 something yards on the ground, a buck 45, over 200 yards of offense. But again, no turnovers. I just don't understand the logic here by Tomlin if they're really contemplating going back, or I should say, going to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, to me, the ship sailed in terms of putting Russell Wilson out there, and I always thought the calf injury was kind of like, okay, we'll kind of use this as an excuse to take a look at Justin Fields and see if he's able to manage this team. He's more of the future than Russell Wilson, and they're winning games. As you said, they're 4-2. They're tied for the top of the AFC North, and why change things up? And the thing we always said about Fields is he had difficulty in terms of technical football. He is doing a good job with that. He's leaning on his running game with Warren and Najee Harris. They're making nice plays. He's getting the ball down here and there to Pickens. And the Steelers' schedule is kind of preferential. So we know they just had a very bad Raiders team. They got the Jets in a big game coming up that we're going to see, yeah, if the Steelers are ready to step forward. So it's Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh against the Jets, who are very desperate. Then they have the Giants on Monday night. They have their bye at Washington, Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Cincinnati. And then, those games are really going to tell us if Fields is really the guy. So stick with him. And if he's not turning the football over, Mike Tomlin should stick with him, because Russell Wilson, we saw the last couple of years, he's just not the same
Done.
guy.
He's shot. No, he's shot. Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us, presented by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check the show notes below. BYP20 for the first purchase. You can catch us during the week as well on the Drive with Q on Coastal Sports Network, 1029 FM The Game. And Lloyd does a great job hosting his own show on Monday nights as well, 8 to 9. I guess you can say the most impressive victory. I mean, look, Tampa put up 51. The Texans put up 41. The Packers put up 34. But the Lions basically toyed with the Dallas Cowboys, right? And you can tell it's still sitting and simmering with Jerry Jones, basically, threatens to fire an entire radio staff and station. Hey, Jerry, deal with it, man. I mean, again, um, you know, they're bad. And you and I thought they were going to be bad. But when you have the Lions have a lineman flank him out wide, or you're running hook and laterals, I mean, you're just toying with these freaking guys, are you not?
It was like Dan Campbell. The Lions had lost like five straight to like the Dallas Cowboys. They wanted to make sure that they had a statement. And for a long time, the Lions were downtrodden and people had been beating them up for a
Hmm.
number of years. And they said, you know what? Now it's our turn. And they just piled it on Dallas. I mean, it was embarrassing. 47-9 final. And the Lions actually, it was crazy. They were a 3-point underdog going in that game. They just destroyed them in Dallas. And the thing was, we always said last year, the Cowboys play so tough at home,
Blowing
which
out teams.
did not happen this year. And now they got a $63 million quarterback who looked totally lost out there. And Jerry Jones probably should concentrate on him. And it was crazy. I was like, oh my God, is that a lineman lined up out wide as a receiver? And they were just trying all kinds of craziness. Luckily, none of those guys got hurt in terms of the end of the game. Because sometimes you see people kind of get with their nose rubbed in it. They'll get a lot of unnecessary roughness penalties or something dirty. So good win for the Lions. And you're right, they're a really dangerous team. They're now 4-1.
Um, who's the next coach to get fired? I hate to bring it up in October, but I feel as though Jacksonville, I mean, they might be the biggest disappointment because I think the expectation, you sign Trevor Lawrence, you give him a monster deal, you have a Super Bowl winning head coach, Doug Peterson, you've got some weapons, you've got a running back, got a tight end. I know Ingram was a little banged up. The defense wasn't that bad. They made Caldwell the scapegoat last year, but they're not even competitive. And that's the thing. Like I don't, you can look at some of these teams and all right, you lose a couple bad games, right? But now you're in London. The owner obviously wants to stick Jacksonville there. He's with his billionaire friends, and you put up 16 points. Caleb Williams looks like the second coming of Sammy Ball, slinging it 35-16. The Bears winning a couple games, 4-2, and Jacksonville is a dismal 1-5 with a winnable game against New England. But at this point, who knows? Then Green Bay, Philly, Minnesota, Detroit. They hit their bye. I mean, this can be a two-win team going into the bye.
Yeah, Q. And that's a tough question about guys who are going to get fired, but it's not looking good for Doug Peterson. We talked about this 2 week day over in England, and they had their opportunity. And unfortunately for him, Shad Khan's team was in the national spotlight. So everybody woke up early, wanted to see that game. And you're right. The Jags were just dead in the water. They couldn't get anything done. Trevor Lawrence was missing receivers. Gabe Davis dropping footballs. Their defense had no answer for Caleb Williams. And then uh, their quarterback was getting hit over and over again. So, yeah, I'd have to say if you look at coaches on the hot seat, definitely Peterson and maybe a number one, and then you have Stefanski, Cleveland, who we talked about, um, and then Dayball. Could they actually get rid of him?
I don't know.
But
I think they just need a quarterback. The
yeah,
offensive line has played well. They need a quarterback. It's just he's not good. He's such an enigma. He's frustrating. It's not Dable's guy. It's not Joe Shane's guy. It was a Gettleman pick. We all know that. They got to
yeah,
live with it. They obviously don't want Daniel Jones as their quarterback going forward. I mean, listen, that one play, throw it away, man. Live to fight another down. You're in the red zone. You just, you get pressure up the gut and you just try to make something happen. You're not Lamar
and
Jackson. You're not Josh Allen. Throw the friggin' ball away. That's
yeah.
not who he is.
Another one I'll throw in is Dennis Allen with the Saints. I mean, they got embarrassed as well. That game was close for a
Oh
little bit,
yeah.
and then the Saints just got destroyed. They're 51-27. And the thing is, Q. Remember, they were 2-0, scored 91 points. Everybody talking about number one team in the league.
There we
Guess what?
go.
They've lost four straight games. So
And Carr's
Dennis
already
Allen, you
breaking
were on the
down.
hot seat.
And Carr's already breaking down.
Yeah, Carr's not playing. The Rattler did a nice job, but he's a young quarterback. But he's going to have a tough time. And then you had Olave get knocked out with a concussion in this game. Kamara kind of banged up, and their defense, obviously, with that score, you saw the problems that they have. So Dennis Allen's been there long enough. I definitely think he's a coach on the hot seat too.
All right, so game balls and Lackey then. Game ball. Uh, is it a quarterback?
He's the quarterback.
I mean, Stafford put up. I'm sorry, not Stafford. What the hell am I saying? Goff put up some big numbers. I don't know who engineer game. I don't know who'd you have for game ball.
Yeah, there were a lot of people that have great weeks this week. In particular, Will Anderson was great on defense. I almost gave it to him for the Houston Texans. Another 3 sacks in their win, but I gave it to Caleb Williams. The number one pick. He was surgical.
Yeah,
Yeah, we talked about how bad the Jaguars were, but he looks in control. I saw him
yeah,
audible at the line, changing things. 23 of 29, 79% completion percentage. 226 yards, 4 TDs. He did have one interception. And then he was running when he needed to, four
yeah.
rushes for 56 yards. So
Good call.
Caleb Williams, big win for him. They're another team. They're 4-2. They may not be as good as their record, but Chicago opening some eyes. So I gave
Yeah,
him the game ball.
yeah, it's a good call. And they ran for a buck 52. Swift again, 90 something odd yards, right? I mean, 5.2 on the ground as a whole. And defensively, they really did a number against Jacksonville. Then I guess, well, I mean, Lackey, do you go Saints? Do you go Jacksonville? It's always, do you go to Dallas Cowboys as a whole? An embarrassing loss at home?
We are of the same mind. I gave it to Jerry Jones, who's not only the owner, he is the general manager and architect of this team. So he can get mad at he wanted to host all he wants. Number one, you don't see any GMs around the league having the gall to be on there, have their own radio show.
No.
So or owners specifically, it was usually a lot of chest thumping on that show
Name me
weekly
name
for
me an
him.
owner that speaks
And
after every game.
exactly. I still remember that, Q. I remember I covered the Eagles and the Cowboys game. I go in the locker room and everybody's waiting for him to speak in the locker room. None of the players, not the coach, the owner slash GM. It's all about him. And so they lose 47-9, get embarrassed. They only had 251 total yards in this game, 3 of 13 on third downs.
Hmm.
Their quarterback got sacked 4 times, and it's the worst loss in Dallas since 1988. So
Wow.
a lot going on there. He's going to get rid of Mike McCarthy if this continues, and then what? But what needs to be done, and for this team to move forward, is for him to leave football
Not
operations to
happening.
someone else, and I don't think it's happening, Q.
No.
So rock bottom, here they come.
As long as he's putting money in the pocket, that's all he's concerned about. All right, that'll do it for a Tuesday edition of BYP. Don't forget, catch Lloyd every Monday night, 8 to 9. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 1029 FM The Game. He joins me during the football season and during the week on Back Your Play with Q, as well as The Drive with Q, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Sports Radio 1029 FM The Game, Coastal Sports Network. We are powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. Give them a holler, open 7 days a week. Playitagainsports.com. Put the locations in and put in Deptford. And of course, fresh roasted coffee. Check out the link below for your first purchase savings, BYP20. All right, my friend, we will do it again Friday when we preview already a week 7. And we'll certainly talk this week on the Drive with Q. Appreciate a couple moments, pal.
All right. Thanks for having me on.